What did the weird kid at your school do to get that reputation? He would eat anything you told him to. We had one of those guys. I remember him eating a cigarette, but with birch smeared all over it. He ended up in hospital one time because he ate a bunch of mini pokeballs. A kid at my high school would perch on the back of his chair in the cafeteria, the way birds do. He never sat on the seat. He also wore a trench coat that would hang down to the ground while he perched and ate. If you tried to talk to him, he would hiss at you. He had incredible balance, but freaked everyone out a little. I went to a school right on the edge of the suburbs. There was a kid who would really do anything to get attention, whether it was hitting on teachers or pulling off childish pranks. One day he ended up driving a tractor to school and parking it diagonal through about 10 parking spaces. The police had to get involved and he was temporarily suspended. In the winter, when there was plenty of snow on the ground, he got down on his stomach, opened his mouth wide, and wormed around consuming the snow. It was a sight to behold, and I wish smartphones existed then. He lied about everything, even things were obviously lies, and he would always insist they were true. For example, he said he was a commercial airline pilot at age 16. In reality, he worked at a gas station, which is a fine job for a teenager. At least he had a job which was better than many, if not most kids that age. But he always tried to make himself sound more exciting than he really was. But it just made him seem weird. Another time he said he was a passenger on a plane when something happened to the pilot that rendered him unable to fly the plane. So he, the kid, had to take the controls and safely land it. I went to boarding school. There were a lot of weird kids over the years. One tried to kill his roommate with razor blades. Another guy had a whack shack and would drink mouthwash along with a sheet of cold meds to jerk all night. One kid on my bus would suck his thumb and stick his index finger up his nose, then switch every few minutes. A girl in my school was always pretending to be a horse, even in class, even in grade 5. To her, pretending to be a horse meant holding her hands downward in front of her chest, skipping instead of walking, and holding her eyes wide open. She did not take constructive criticism, nor the other kind. Used to pay people to kick him in the nuts, like lots of money. Think he got some sort of weird sexual pleasure put of it. He also shit shorts in the hallway, and it felt out on the floor. That was freshman year. He's just a businessman, doing business. Pretty tame. Honestly, the weird kid at my school was weird because he wore shorts and sandals every day of the year, even when there were 6 inches of snow on the ground, and he had messy tangled hair and a scraggly beard. That happy caveman guy was what people called him. I was casual friends with his sister. She was nice. No idea what he did with his life. Well, he would come to school dressed like a mobster, white suit, shirt, shoes. When talking, he would bring up stuff he does with his girlfriend. He didn't get bullied, PPL just felt uncomfortable around him because he clearly didn't have good convo skills. Problem is, he was a real douche and wanted to get a bad boy reputation, so one day he got up from his chair and left. The door lady was like, "Okay, teacher said did. Guy's name. Just leave." Ah, never mind, nobody gave a crap about it. His plan backfired, it just made him look weirder. Elementary and middle school, kid was afraid of meat. Someone chased him around the whole school with a piece of sweet and sour chicken once. High school, kid got caught jerking off to Minecraft porn in the bathroom. One kid brought his basketball to class. The weird kid wanted it, so he took it. The entire class watched in, or as they chased each other around the room for a solid 7 to 10 minutes screaming their heads off. My teacher was absolutely done and checked out. He just sat at his desk waiting with a face that said, "I might just grab my and go home, I really might." One kid wore a puffer jacket every single day of the year and refused to take it off. He sat at the weird kid table. He got a heat stroke on the last day of school and they had to cut it off him. He moved away that summer and then moved back 3 years later, and he was easily now the hottest guy in school, grew maybe a foot, started working out, and had a funny personality on top of that. Overall was a great guy, but really had some strange cringy moments in his early days. He turned on the oven at home on full heat and opened the door just enough to put one finger in, just to see what would happen. He left it in there long enough to cook his fingertip and had half the finger amputated once his mother caught him. and took him to hospital. It was also rumored that he killed his sister's pet guinea pig by putting it in the microwave, but no one knew if that was true. My school was famous for hallway stampedes during Spirit Week. A freshman stood in front of an incoming stampede with his hand out, as if that was gonna stop them, and got absolutely plowed. I'm pretty sure he broke his arm. He then earned the nickname Moses for trying to part the stampede, as if it was the Red Sea. Okay, so the weird kid was this girl who was 50% loony and 50% taking the piss out of everyone. She really did have some kind of psychological problem, and spent time in a facility for a while for it, but she was never quite right. Like, she worshipped a DVD copy of Sweeney Todd. She'd take it out in class, read the back of the case, read the paper insert, then lick the disc. She'd often sit there and talk to herself about how she couldn't stop people from listening to her. Granted, we could all hear her. I don't think we were who she was talking to herself about. She'd Naruto run in the halls and wear cat ears. Yeah, she was that kid too. All that being said, if you just talked to her, she was a pretty normal person. A bit excitable, but normal conversation came easy for her. That's how I found out she was taking the piss out of people. I'd always heard she had some crazy religion, but I didn't know what it was. The first time I was sitting next to her, I saw her flying spaghetti monster sticker on a notebook and just said, "Hey, a fellow pastafarian." Her eyes lit the F up. It was as if someone had bought her wacky a brand new copy of Sweeney Todd on DVD. She told me I was the first person to figure out that she was an atheist and didn't actually believe in a spaghetti monster. So, yeah, IDK. I think she just needed some proper meds and a counselor. Someone to just talk to. Yeah, no, a decent person. Just misunderstood. Got no clue where she's at now. Wherever she is, I hope her and whoever is listening to her are both happy. He used to poop himself. He stunk. So we all pretty much knew he was a shter himselfer. One day someone went through his backpack and found toilet paper, baby wipes and talcum powder. The bullying got so bad he left the school. I can't begin to describe in words how guilty and regretful I'm about this. I was cruel. We were all cruel. Kids can be awful. Sumin, I'm sorry buddy. In my high school we had this guy, we called him Cow Effer Kyle. He never fed a cow or anything like that, but he was a one-ape cowboy. We live in the prairies, of course. He was sitting in the library and was watching a cow that was stuck in a fence get mounted by another cow and was just having the biggest grin. Or another time he was learning guitar and he decided that he could sing too. So I don't quite remember the lyrics exactly, but he changed some country songs lyrics from something similar to put the Ford to the floor, and he changed it to F-ing 4 on the floor because you know sex. He was interesting some days, definitely weird guy though. Unfortunately, the weird kid at my school had mental problems. Back in those days, kids like that were bullied and teased to the point of tears. Years later, I found out that he committed suicide in his young 30s. I felt bad that I was one of those who teased him. So if you can't be nice to the weird kids, then at least leave them alone. This kid was super tall for a 5th grader. He was almost 6 feet tall. Once during math class he sneezed, and a string of snot came out of his nose. Instead of freaking out and wiping it off, he slapped that mother trucker back into his nose. The sound it made has stayed burned in my memories. Now remember when I said he was tall? This string of snot came all the way from his nose to the desk. I have no idea how he fit all that back in his nose without throwing up from the sensation. He walked up to a girl in a lunchroom and told her that he thought about her last night when he masturbated into his sock, and that he was wearing that sock today. He ended up getting kicked out of school for that line. He also used to carry every single textbook to his classes. Even though we had block scheduling, he could barely lift them all, and it looked hilarious and sad at the same time. He wasn't alright in the head. We had 2 weird kids in school. One was eating spaghetti at lunch one day and there was a giant hair in it. We told him he was eating the lunch lady's hair and he just kept going to town on the food. He also used to try and rub himself on objects and people. There was also a kid in elementary school who was constantly sick and barely went to school. He was really antisocial. It was like he didn't learn how to be around other kids because he was constantly in and out of the hospital. He left one day and never came back, and we all thought he died until years later when he showed up to high school. Turns out he had missed so much school that his parents took him out and homeschooled him. He was still really weird and off-putting, but at least he was alive. Everyone was always really overly nice to him, so that may be why he seemed so socially awkward. I also knew a girl who rubbed poop all over herself and would have her dog lick it off. She also enjoyed eating it. I met her in a partial hospitalization program though, so most people were weird there. It was a mix of teens who refused to go to school and kids with severe psychiatric disorders. In middle school, I knew this kid named Tom. I had seen him around in elementary, but didn't talk to him until 6th grade. He was pretty chill, but I slowly realized how weird he truly was. One time on the bus, he told me, once you learn how to masturbate properly, you can't stop, along with a story about when he fed a teddy bear that had a hole in it. This was 6th grade. By 7th grade, we knew him as the GOAT, not meaning the greatest of all time, meaning he would eat anything. He went as far as to eat the do not eat packet from some kid's beef jerky. His one weakness was ketchup for some reason. He smelled noticeably bad and had a singular whisker protruding from his upper lip. In the 8th grade, he became obsessed with the knife game. He would tell me about his failed attempts and show what happened to his fingers during those attempts. That reminds me of when he tried making a crossbow in 6th grade and cut himself so hard with a badgerel knife that he cut a fine nerve in his finger. He rammed his head into lockers and fell down the stairs for attention. The kid was weird. He had a really bad home life, with his dad being in jail for as long as he could remember, and his mom being a raging alcoholic. It was almost a daily occurrence for him to come to school and tell me, my mom locked me out again last night. Poor guy. He ended up switching to another school in 9th grade, and that was the last I heard of him. Wonder where he is now. He had a budget collection under his desk, and he ruined all his shirts by constantly chewing on the front of the collar. In hindsight, he probably had some mental issues, even though he wasn't in any special education classes. But being in elementary school, we were little sheds and didn't know any better, so he just got labeled as the icky weird kid no one wanted to be around, even though he never did anything bad to anyone. He was actually really smart too. We had a new kid come to our school during sophomore year, and he said he was adopted and gave off weird vibes, and he lied about everything. Wasn't until I was a senior that I found out that he lied about being adopted, and he threatened to kill himself if my friend left him, and lied to her about going to therapy. I was worried one day he was gonna come to school with a gun and waste us. He wore a kilt, wasn't Scottish or Irish, just did it in an attempt to provoke a response from the school. The dress code didn't prohibit the kilt, so nobody initially cared. It became an issue when the smell started bothering people. His parents only bought him one, and he went weeks without washing it. The smell of sweat was so bad he was sent home and told to come back in clean clothes. After that, he was ostracized, while not directly bullied, because he now had a reputation as someone who tried to provoke confrontations with the school or other students. We had a few. One ate a slice of ham off the floor outside. A small group were notorious for just destroying the bathrooms and only spending time in said bathrooms at break and lunch. One never wore socks to school. One sent his A to a girl and begged for nudes, as well as generally being quite weird and creepy in general. One who I had a personal experience with kept showing me and a friend videos of people's balls being chopped off, and he had previously brought a knife to school, as well as being accused of sexual assault. There's more, but they are the ones who stuck out. He was begin to blackmail brides, to the point where he would wear some of the most over-the-top edgy stuff to school. He would hurt himself during our lunch period and make sure everyone sitting with him saw. He was in a relationship with this girl who was in special ed classes. He would climb trees outside of the school while everyone was leaving. He had a lisp and had braces, which made the lisp worse. Not sure if this really counts, since we were in college, but I'm sure she was the weird kid at every other level of school as well. I showed up to my first anthropology class and sat next to this weird looking girl. I didn't want to discriminate. She looked like a dirty hobo, but hey, it was Colorado. Lots of people looked like dirty hobos. After a discreet sniff in her direction, I Saturday, well, that was a big effing mistake. She took off her dirty sandal and picked up her dirty foot and proceeded to chew off her big toenail. I absolutely did gather my things back up and go sit somewhere else. I will never forget the sound of her teeth breaking through toenail. The weird kid at my school walked around with a clear plastic trench coat on and would sell candy out of a briefcase. He was kind of just a little out there. On occasion the guy would just randomly plug in Christmas lights in class, and during exams you would just catch like red and green lights start going in the back. He wasn't a bad dude, just kind of out there. He would occasionally show up to part his eye through. He was alright quiet. His girlfriend thought she was half vampire. She was a little bit on the interesting side. As far as I'm aware, he ditched the plastic trench coat sometime around his first semester of freshman year of college and is now trying to get into like physical therapist PhD programs. He's a chill dude, just kind of little weird, but an alright guy.